Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is Chemistry, Chapter 8, Section 3, Part 4. And Section 3 is on intermolecular forces. So what are they? Well, we've talked about them before. They are the forces between intermolecules. So the forces of attraction between molecules. Please write that down. Intermolecular forces are weaker than covalent bonds, they are weaker than ionic bonds, they're weaker than metallic bonds, but they are still quite important. Why? Well, if you didn't have any intermolecular bonds, then no molecules, no covalent compounds could be solid or liquid. Because if you remember, solids and liquids have their molecules are either attracted to each other and vibrating in place in the solid state, or they are attracted to each other and flowing over each other in the liquid state. So if you have a stronger intermolecular bond, then you have a higher boiling point. You know, for something to boil, all of the intermolecular bonds between the molecules have to be broken so that it can go into the gas phase. So if you have a strong intermolecular bond, it's going to take more energy to break those bonds, and you're going to have a higher boiling point. So looking on page 245, there are some good diagrams like flowcharts and also pictures of intermolecular bonds and how all the bonds relate to each other. Okay, the first type we're going to talk about is a dipole-dipole force. It is the strongest of the intermolecular forces. It's attraction between polar molecules. And it is the attraction of a positive end of one molecule to the negative end of another molecule. So let's look at hydrochloric acid. So I want you to make this drawing, please. We have one hydrogen and we have another hydrogen chloride. And you can see that this is a polar molecule. So this is a Greek letter. It's kind of between an S and a G. You go, it's a small sigma. So this is partially negative and this is partially positive. And over here the same. So our partially negative side is attracted to this partially positive side. And then this one would be attracted to another chlorine. So these are dipole-dipole forces right here. There is a very important dipole-dipole force, and it is hydrogen bonding. Okay, so hydrogen bonding is a special type of dipole-dipole, and so we're going to call that 1B. And it is the intermolecular attraction between a hydrogen and the unbonded pair of electrons from another atom in another molecule. So it is the positive hydrogen is attracted to the negative end of some electrons in another molecule, so the negative end of a different molecule. The most important example is water. So let's look at a picture. Okay, here's a bunch of water molecules, and you can see that they are partially positive and partially negative. So the partially negative are these blue ends there, and the partially positive are those red ends. And if you look carefully, you can see that the red ends are attracted to blue ends and vice versa. And if we look over here with just two of them, we can see one hydrogen bond. We have our partially negative oxygen, and we know it has two unbonded pairs, one there and one there. And that is being attracted to the hydrogen. And then there would be another water molecule over here, and another water molecule over here, and another one over here, and you could see how it would get very complicated. So hydrogen bonds are responsible for the special properties and roles of water. So a lot of times the answer to a question is going to be hydrogen bonding. It is that important. Hydrogen bonds are necessary for life. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So one way that hydrogen bonds are necessary for life is that ice is less dense than liquid water. And you're like, Mrs. Algo, so my ice floats in my glass. That's not all that important. Because, why does this happen? So we'll talk about why it happens and then why it's important for life. Hydrogen bonds force water crystals to align further apart when they are liquid. So let's take a look at a little bit of a picture down here, and then we'll talk about this stuff here. Okay, so you can see that ice has this nice crystalline structure and they are evenly spaced out, but then when it has these hydrogen bonds, it actually forces them further apart than when they have this nice ice crystal. So that means that water takes up more volume, which means it's less dense. What does that mean? Well, bodies of water don't freeze from the bottom up. They freeze at the top, which gives this nice little insulating layer for everything below it. And if they froze from the bottom up, no life would be in that water because it couldn't last for more than a couple of months. So it would just kill all life. Also, if we had all of the ice from the bottom up, then all of the land would be flooded and there'd be no land animals. So thank you, water and hydrogen bonding. Another way hydrogen bonding helps life is because water has a very high specific heat. And if you have a very high specific heat, it means it takes a lot of energy to increase the temperature. Why? If you're going to increase the temperature, remember temperature is kinetic energy. So if you're going to increase the kinetic energy, you have to put energy into those molecules. You have to give them kinetic energy. But a lot of times the energy is being used up by those hydrogen bonds, breaking those hydrogen bonds. So not as much energy goes into making the molecules move, which not as much energy goes into making them hotter. So it takes a lot of energy to break all the hydrogen bonds. So, this is a big one. So since water makes up a lot of our planet, and it takes a lot of energy to heat up or cool down water, that means Earth's temperatures are actually quite moderate for our planet. So, pretty optimal for life to evolve here. Another one is our bodies are mostly made out of water. So that means it takes a lot of energy to heat up or cool down our bodies. So that's really important for maintaining a constant body temperature. And it also means that you can use sweating and evaporative cooling to maintain a constant body temperature. So if you have sweat on your skin and then when it evaporates, it's going to take a lot of energy. Where does that energy come from? Your body. So it's going to cool you down. So that is how high specific heat helps us. So another way hydrogen bonds are important for life and give water its specific characteristics is that water has a high surface tension, adhesion, and cohesion. So let's talk about what these words are. Surface tension is the force acting to pull the liquid surface into the smallest possible area, like a drop of water. So the force acting to pull water into a drop, or the force acting to pull water on the top of a glass as opposed to spilling over. Well, why is this? Well, that's because of adhesion and cohesion. So adhesion is when water or a liquid sticks to the surface of a container. And we have seen this, like if you have a glass, that water will kind of stick, particularly in a graduated cylinder. We can see that meniscus, and we see that the water is sticking to the sides of the graduated cylinder. Whereas cohesion is water sticking to itself. And so if water prefers to stick to itself, it is going to, here we go, instead of spilling over, it's going to want to stay by itself. And so then you can actually fill a glass with water more full than the level of the glass. And why is it? Well, water has all of those hydrogen bonds keeping it together. What's a use of that? Water bugs. So you see there's a high water tension. Water has a high surface tension, and so there are water bugs that can actually live on top of the water because of that high surface tension. So that makes more places in an ecosystem, like more niches in an ecosystem for different organisms to live. Also, we have capillary action. So capillary action is adhesion and cohesion, where water can actually move up against gravity because it's sticking to the walls of a narrow tube, and then also it's sticking to itself, so it pulls the rest of it up. So because of capillary action and then also changes in pressure, plants can be more than like an inch tall. So water has to travel, let's say we have a 100-foot tree, it's going to have to travel 100 feet up to get to the leaves at the top from the roots. And how does that happen? Well, when some water evaporates out of the leaf, it creates like a vacuum, so that then the water wants to like replace itself, and so it moves up, and then one water molecule pulls the next, pulls the next, pulls the next, and also they are narrow so that there's adhesion sticking to the sides. So yeah, so then we can have plants and animals because we don't just have a world covered with just moss. Okay, water has some very special properties, and we know that water and these properties are essential for life, but hydrogen bonding is important in areas besides water. So where? Well, how about DNA strands? So we know that you have 2 strands of DNA and they're complementary to each other, and that is how they are replicated, is they separate, and one makes a model, a template for the other one, and then these hydrogen strands are bonded together by hydrogen bonds. So A bonds with T and C bonds with G by hydrogen bonds, adenine and thymine, cytosine and guanine. So there's a nice picture of that on page 248. Also, hydrogen bonds play a key role in the shape of protein. There are a lot of hydrogen bonds that kind of are holding the protein in the shape that it is, and we know structure and function. We know the shape of a protein determines its job. So if the protein changes shape, it can't have that special lock and key mechanism, so then it can't do its job. So hydrogen bonding determines the shape determines its job, and if a protein can't do its job, then whatever that job was doesn't happen and the organism dies. Also, hydrogen bond helps us glue. So glue has a lot of hydrogen bonds that keeps 2 objects in place, like sticking to each other. So when the glue dries, you have those hydrogen bonds, like putting your paper on your other piece of paper and gluing it in place. Okay, so we've talked about intermolecular forces between polar molecules, which are dipole-dipole forces, and a special case of that is hydrogen bonding. But what about intermolecular forces between non-polar molecules? And that would be a London dispersion force, and we're going to talk about that in another short video I'm going to make. I will see you then. Bye.